第5单元卫生与健康课文口译1英汉口译
Colleagues and friends, it is a great pleasure for me to be with you all here today. We gather with a sense of optimism. Firstly, because overall smoking figures are showing positive trends in the United States and in other industrialized countries. Secondly, because the situation and terms of the fight against tobacco have changed dramatically. The battle has been underway for over 50 years. The first big change occurred 36 years ago, when Luther Terry introduced his landmark Surgeon General report. The damaging health effects of tobacco were clearly stated. Tobacco gives rise to cancer. Tobacco kills. This became the foundation for policies to curb the tobacco epidemic in a number of countries around the world. The second big change took place in the last 3 years. Through a number of court verdicts and inquiries, another fundamental principle has emerged. Tobacco companies should be accountable for the harm caused by tobacco use. This principle will guide policy and public opinion in the future. It is also a principle which the tobacco companies will have to consider when they plan their future strategies. Unfortunately, optimism about progress is not universal. Anyone who believes that we are winning the battle against tobacco should take a look at the global figures. What they will see is an emerging epidemic. As we have already heard, worldwide mortality from tobacco is likely to rise from about 4 million deaths a year in 1998 to about 10 million a year in 2030. In public health terms, this is comparable to the HIV epidemic. Over 70% of the deaths will be in the developing world. The implications are obvious. Tobacco is not only a human tragedy. Tobacco also burdens our health systems. It costs taxpayers money. It hampers the productivity of our economies. We have seen this happening in the US and in Europe. But now, these burdens are hitting developing countries, countries which need all their resources to build their social and physical infrastructure. They have no money to spend on the unnecessary costs of a man-made epidemic. Yet the picture is far from bleak. Globally, we have seen a sea change over the past few years. A groundswell of local, national, and global actions is moving the public health agenda ahead. This is occurring through the development of innovative partnerships, networks, and alliances. 2 months ago, I watched as 10,000 health volunteers gathered in Bangkok to mark this year's World No Tobacco Day. World No Tobacco Day is now both a process and an event. The process of getting ready for the event in May builds capacity in the international public health community to raise the quality of the global debate on tobacco control. Tobacco kills, don't be duped, was this year's theme with a special focus on tobacco advertising and promotion in films, music, and sports. It allowed the world to get a better picture of tobacco industry-backed duping of science, public health, and government policy packaged as freedom and fun. On the same day here in the US, the Surgeon General co-hosted a meeting with Reverend Jesse Brown in Philadelphia to highlight the way in which tobacco advertisements target minority groups. In Lebanon, the First Lady urged action against tobacco promotion and advertising. The Brazilian Minister of Health launched a massive multimedia campaign and announced increased excise taxes on tobacco products. The South African Health Minister announced that cigarette sales would be regulated, free distribution of cigarettes would be prohibited, and that all advertising would be banned. The laws came into effect last month. In Canada, the Health Minister used World No Tobacco Day to unveil new cigarette packaging. The labels show, as many of you know, in graphic detail, the effects of smoking, not only in the lungs, but also oral cancer, gum disease, and clogged arteries. Here in the USA, Eric Karros of the Los Angeles Dodgers joined a high school rally against tobacco promotion. He unveiled a public service announcement featuring himself and other baseball players from the New York Yankees, Cleveland Indians, etc., talking about the importance of staying tobacco-free. Smoke-free soccer is another campaign gathering momentum. These are not one-off events. They're examples of a growing global movement that demands tobacco-free policies to be the norm, as we see results. On the World No Tobacco Day, David Byrne, European Union Commissioner for Health, called for strong support for new European Community regulations aimed at tobacco products. In June, the European Parliament voted for a range of tough new measures, warnings that cover 50% of the space on cigarette packs, removal of misleading information such as low tar, mild and light, and reductions in tar and nicotine. In many countries all over the world, grassroots activities are inspiring governments to take action. The action centers on a few well-tested and effective measures: increased prices, a total ban on tobacco advertising and sponsorship, strong counter-advertising, better access to quitting methods, smoke-free areas, and controls on smuggling. This prescription is also the basis for the advice to developing countries that is contained in the latest World Bank (WHO) book, which will be released Wednesday. It shows that increased tobacco taxation both reduces smoking rates and increases revenue. That is really good news, a finding governments around the world need to take on board. WHO has taken on a key role in this global effort. The reason for this is clear. As the world's specialized health agency, we are charged with working towards the best health achievable for all. Our main priority is to promote health equity, and so contribute to the well-being of all the world's people. We fight infectious diseases such as malaria, tuberculosis, and AIDS. But to fulfill our mandate, we must also go all out to reduce the terrible toll of tobacco. All the global work, be it by NGOs, by governments, by the private sector, or by international organizations, is pointing in one direction. Its logical conclusion is what now will take shape as the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. The Framework Convention on Tobacco Control is the first international treaty on public health ever proposed by the World Health Organization. It has been endorsed by the 192 member nations of the WHO. Drafting of the treaty by the member states will start this October. Like the Convention to ban landmines, the Tobacco Convention also seeks to stop a killer. The treaty will provide an international framework to address both national health policies and to control the global reach of big tobacco. It will set standards that countries can adopt to controlling advertising, prevent smuggling, and facilitate the global exchange of knowledge. Of course, adopting the Framework Convention will not be easy in some countries. The talents and dedication of the people in this room today are essential to this fight for better health. I ask you all to join me on this to become partners with me and the World Health Organization on this vital journey toward better health for all the people everywhere. Let us work together to change the scene for coming generations. I sense that when we meet again, in 3 years' time, there will be real progress. We will have an effective framework convention. We will have seen the effective implementation of anti-tobacco policies by at least 100 countries. And in several of these countries, there will be significant reductions in tobacco use, particularly among the young. Thank you.
2. 汉英口译。
中国拥有13亿人口，既是生产大国，也是消费大国。以人为本是中国政府的执政理念和根本宗旨，不断满足人民群众日益增长的物质文化需求，是中国政府的不懈追求。中国政府历来重视产品质量和食品安全，物美价廉的中国制造为全世界的消费者，尤其是美国人民提供了丰富的选择。作为国际社会大家庭中的一员，中国政府以高度的责任感，强化了产品质量，尤其是出口产品质量的监管和控制体系，包括成立了国家质量监督检验检疫总局、国家食品药品监督管理局，充实了农业、卫生、工商等部门的监管力量，制修订产品质量法、标准化法、进出口商品检验法、食品安全法、农业转基因生物安全管理条例、 突发公共卫生事件应急条例等法律法规，以打击制假售假为重点，开展整顿和规范市场经济秩序活动。经过多年坚持不懈的努力，中国的产品质量控制和食品安全监管水平有很大提高。随着经济全球化的深入发展，产品质量和食品安全日益成为全球性问题。中国政府高度关注国内外消费者对产品质量和食品安全的反应和诉求。我们认为，即使存在1/1000的不合格产品，也有可能对消费者构成100%的危害。为此，中国政府从今年8月开始，在全国范围内开展了为期4个月的大规模专项整治特别行动，重点对农产品、生产加工食品、流通领域食品、餐饮消费、药品、猪肉、进出口商品和其他涉及人身健康安全的消费品等8个方面进行集中整治。整治的目标是在解决突出问题的同时，建立健全从产品设计、原材料进场、生产加工、出厂销售到售后服务的工业品全过程监管链条，建立健全从种植养殖、生产加工、流通销售到餐饮消费的食品全过程监管链条，建立产品质量安全追溯体系和责任追究体系，建立覆盖全社会的产品质量监管网络。我们把任务分解成20个量化指标，作为业绩考核内容落实到地方各级政府和有关部门，把责任落实到企业和生产经营者。中国政府还发布特别规定，进一步明确了生产经营者、监督管理部门和地方政府的责任，要求严格执法，依法打击各种违反产品质量和安全的行为。现在，全世界都可以看到，在中国的广阔田野，大批技术人员在指导农民正确使用农药；在中国的工厂车间，产品的每一道工序都在进行严格的质量控制；在中国的口岸，出口的每一批产品都要经过严格的查验。最近一段时间，我本人主持召开了10次专题会议，先后3次分别率领300多人到浙江、山东、广东等地督导工作，现场检查了268家企业。中国制造出口量最大的广东省召开了10万人的动员会，会后组织学习的人数超过100万人，政府免费发放宣传资料1000多万份。这次特别行动卓有成效，集中解决了一些影响质量安全的突出问题。676个大中城市农产品批发市场已全部纳入监测范围， 98.7% 的食品生产加工小企业签订了质量安全承诺书，对重点药品生产企业派驻了监督员，对食品和其他涉及人身健康安全的消费品普遍实行了不合格产品召回制度，对所有的出口食品原料基地、儿童玩具等重点商品进行了清查，取消了不合格企业的出口资格。我认为，为了维护消费者的权益，采取严而又严的措施是必要的，即使可能增加出口成本，影响出口数量，我们也要坚持不懈地抓下去。我相信，随着这次特别行动的深入开展，中国的法律法规体系、质量标准体系和监督管理体系必定会更加完善，中国制造必将对全球消费者更具吸引力。加强国际沟通与合作，对于世界各国共同应对产品质量和食品安全问题至关重要。为此，我主张：第一，要客观分析国家之间在产品质量和食品安全认识上存在的分歧。随着经济社会发展、科技进步，人们对产品质量和食品安全要求越来越高，指标越来越细，标准越来越全。由于各国国情和发展阶段不同，质量标准、质量监管体系和制度确实存在差异，监管能力和水平也会存在差距，并且过去认为是可行的管理办法，现在和将来不一定可行。当务之急，我们应该在不同之中寻求并强化共同点，共同改进质量监管办法，提高产品质量。 第二，要基于事实，正确分析不合格产品产生的原因，防止片面炒作。对问题产品，要弄清是设计问题还是原材料原因，是生产问题还是运输过程中出现的差错，不能不分原因简单地将问题归罪于制造方。第三，要理性处理产品质量和食品安全个案，防止以偏概全，更要防止将其政治化，制造新的贸易壁垒。在保障产品质量和食品安全方面，中国深知自己的责任和义务，但在我们为此付出艰辛努力的同时，也需要贸易伙伴的理解、支持和配合。经济全球化已经将所有经济体前所未有的联系在一起，只有加强合作，才能确保全球消费者的利益。
口译实践一，英汉口译。
In just the past few years, the political and public profile of malaria has risen to unprecedented heights. I see solid reasons for optimism in the strength of international commitment, in the power of existing interventions, and in the coherence of evidence-based strategies for implementation. But the best reason for optimism comes from the results we are seeing in some African countries, particularly following better coverage with bed nets and use of the newer strategy for home-based management. New tools, most notably a vaccine, would allow us to raise the bar of expectations, but we are already seeing solid progress using existing tools. I believe this is the right way to move forward for malaria and many other diseases, using existing tools for an immediate impact while stimulating R&D to develop the tools that can support far more ambitious goals. Again, this sense that the stage is set for malaria results must be qualified. We have strong evidence demonstrating the superior efficacy and safety of artemisinin-based combination therapies. But ACT drugs cost 20 to 40 times more than conventional treatments. For a disease that takes its heaviest toll on impoverished rural families in Africa, price can be an absolute barrier to access. For me, one of the most encouraging trends in public health today is the power of commitment to unleash the best of human ingenuity. Let me give just one example. Unitaid, which draws funds primarily from a levy on airline tickets, began operating in 2006 as a facility for purchasing drugs and diagnostics for AIDS, TB, and malaria. This facility is not only purchasing large quantities of interventions, it is already showing additional benefits arising from the guarantee of a large and predictable market. Unitaid has provided an incentive for product improvements, including pediatric formulations for AIDS and TB drugs. Establishment of a rotating stockpile of second-line drugs for TB serves as an incentive for manufacturers to increase their production capacity and develop pre-qualified products. Large procurement volumes have secured substantial price reductions. In partnership with the Clinton Foundation, Unitaid has brokered average price reductions of 40% for HIV/AIDS drugs. Several partners are now considering an innovative funding facility for making ACTs more affordable. This approach involves heavily subsidized prices at the point when these drugs leave the manufacturer, thus cutting prices for both the public and private sectors. This is the kind of hard-nosed pragmatism that gets results in public health. It looks at the reality of conditions in the developing world, identifies the forces that shape the reality, and then outsmarts them. If prices affects access, make the price of the best products competitive, and thus drive ineffective, substandard, or counterfeit products off the market. We must keep such approaches in mind as we consider broad ways to improve access to essential medicines. Progress in combating the neglected tropical diseases, the high disability diseases, brings us more good news. The strategies are increasingly consolidated, streamlined, and cost-effective, and they are also outsmarting the obstacles. We must never forget these diseases affect the bottom billion, the poorest of the poor living in the hardest-to-reach places. As we all know, good results can be highly persuasive at the policy level. We are now seeing evidence that the strategy of mass preventative chemotherapy can interrupt transmission. For example, last year, China and Egypt announced the elimination of lymphatic filariasis, a disease that currently disables some 40 million people. Other countries are on the verge of similar achievements. For many other priority diseases, trends such as globalization and urbanization have introduced a commonality to health problems seen in every part of the world. More and more, health problems are being shaped by the same powerful forces. This similarity in health challenges was readily apparent during the regional committees, where certain items appeared on every agenda. Countries in all regions are concerned about emerging and epidemic-prone diseases. All recognize the significance of the revised international health regulations. All regions know we have moved a big step forward in terms of our collective security, but they also recognize the responsibility this places on countries, as well as on this organization. Many regional committees also addressed the threat posed by avian influenza. This season has again given us some stark reminders that the threat of an influenza pandemic has by no means diminished. Countries in all regions are very deeply concerned about the rise of chronic diseases. The impact is now being felt in very poor countries, where we see morbidity from conditions such as hypertension and diabetes side by side with high mortality from infectious diseases. We see severe malnutrition and stunting side by side with obesity. The health-related Millennium Development Goals were on every agenda, usually together with progress reports. Progress is mixed, but all regions see difficulty in meeting the goal set for reducing maternal mortality. This concerns me deeply. We must continue to make the health of women a high priority. As a cause for optimism, last year's major conference on Women Deliver, held in London, brought together the energy, the commitment, and the knowledge for change. We should not be surprised that improved maternal health is such a difficult goal to reach. Maternal mortality will not go down until more women have access to skilled attendance at birth and emergency obstetric care. The need for a well-functioning and inclusive health system is absolute. Moreover, the causes of maternal mortality are broad and closely linked to social and economic factors. There is no single pill, bednet, or vaccine that can guarantee results. In this regard, I look forward to the report of the Commission on Social Determinants of Health, which will be released later this year. Fortunately, countries in all regions have recognized the need to strengthen health systems and are giving this issue high priority. They understand the reality. Money, good intentions, and good interventions are not enough. If we want health to work as a poverty reduction strategy, we must reach the poor. Countries desperately need better delivery systems to do so.
2. 汉英口译。尊敬的大会主席、女士们、先生们，大家好。我受中华人民共和国政府的委托，率领中国政府代表团，本着积极务实的态度和坦诚、负责、信任、合作的精神，前来参加这次联大艾滋病特别会议。5年前， 在这里召开的联合国艾滋病问题特别联大会议通过了《艾滋病控制承诺宣言》，对推动全球进一步关注艾滋病问题、协调和加强防治工作发挥了积极作用。5年来，中国政府采取一系列积极行动，全面落实艾滋病防治的各项措施。到2005年底，全国基本形成了政府组织领导、部门各负其责、全社会共同参与的艾滋病防治工作机制。中央财政用于艾滋病防治工作的专项经费由2002年的1亿元增加到2005年的8亿元，地方财政专项投入也大幅度增加，全面开展了免费抗病毒治疗、预防艾滋病母婴传播、自愿咨询检测服务，积极推广使用安全套，加快开展美沙酮维持治疗和清洁针具交换等预防干预工作，广泛开展宣传教育，群众防治知识知晓率不断提高，感染者生活救助和艾滋病致孤儿童上学等政策逐步得到落实，非政府组织开始发挥越来越重要的作用，国际社会交流与合作明显增强。但是，我们也清醒地认识到，中国艾滋病疫情还没有得到有效遏制，面临的形势依然严峻。面对艾滋病的挑战，中国政府将本着对人民健康高度负责的精神，进一步加大工作力度，使中国的艾滋病防治工作在原有的基础上再上一个新台阶。下一步的工作重点是：一、全面贯彻落实艾滋病防治条例和中国遏制与防治艾滋病行动计划2006至2010年，建立各级政府防治工作责任制，将艾滋病防治工作纳入国民经济和社会发展规划。2、加强宣传教育，普及艾滋病防治知识，到2010年，19至49岁人口艾滋病知识知晓率，城市达到85%以上，农村达到75%以上。3、认真落实4免1关怀政策，依法保护艾滋病患者的合法权益，反对社会歧视。4、对重点人群实施以安全套推广、美沙酮维持治疗等为主要手段的干预措施，到2010年，力争使有效干预措施基本覆盖主要高危人群和流动人口。5、积极开展国际合作，充分发挥非政府组织的作用。中国政府将继续积极参与国际社会抗击艾滋病的斗争，承担自己的责任和义务，为实现全球控制艾滋病的目标做出自己的贡献。谢谢各位。